Hey everyone, welcome back to Unmedicated Disaster. I am Danielle,
My name's Al.
and we are here to celebrate a lot of people's favorite holiday, and that would be April the 20th.
Yeah, happy
So,
420, everybody.
yeah, happy to celebrate it. And if for those of you who don't know what that means, today we're going to talk about
Yeah.
weed. So I know, especially nowadays, weed brings up a lot of feelings in a lot of people. So what we wanted to do today, kind of give you like a little history, see how we got to where we are right now and see where we're going and how we feel about these things. Um, we are not historians. We don't pretend to be professionals or well educated. We did a quick Google search, did some digging, found some basic facts, and we're going to share them with you. If anything interests you, go ahead and look it up yourself from more reputable sources than this podcast. And as a side note, we're not high for this,
No.
just for the record, because we wanted to actually be able to record this.
Yeah, exactly. And you brought up an actually great point. This is a simple Google search. Like the amount of education that you can get just by Googling certain things, it's crazy. I want to apologize to everybody ahead of time why I sound weird because I decided to wash my hair and I did so by listening to uh, Florence and the Machine. So Florence, if you're out there, I love you. But
He'll see you in Washington
I
later
will
this
see you in
year.
Washington, hopefully. But yeah, if everything goes well. But yeah, that's why I sound a little off. So apologize for that. But yeah, so let's get this podcast
All right.
started, and
Start that history lesson.
yeah, let's start that history lesson. So if you're not aware, or if some of you are aware, weed's been a part of humanity's life for a very, very long time. Um, it wasn't introduced in the United States until the early 1830s for medicinal purposes, where a doctor went over into India, found out that, hey, the stuff that people use here in India can be used for medical purposes. But back in the day, like even not even over in Europe, but in North America, South America, every one of these indigenous and Native American tribes were all using cannabis way before then.
Yeah, it usually takes the colonizers a minute to catch on to these things. And what actually brought it more to prevalence in the United States, aside from um, these white doctors saying, hey, we can use it for medicine, was as the Industrial Revolution kicked up in the United States, there were a bunch of workers coming over from Mexico. So that's been going on forever as well.
Yeah,
And we love our migrant workers. We live in a very rural area where there's a lot of farms, so the migrant workers do come here. So nothing but respect for them. As an aside, but these folks, instead of kicking back, having a beer, drinking alcohol, their preferred vice was the cannabis.
yeah.
So they introduced that to people here in the United States and kind of brought that into more prevalence when they were around.
Yeah. So during the Prohibition, though, more people began to smoke weed because alcohol was then suddenly made illegal. So for anybody who was just like, oh, alcohol at one point wasn't
Yeah.
legal, and people turned to other things besides alcohol. Now, it's sort of following a trend here. So alcohol was legal, made illegal, back again to being legal. And it's the same thing that's happening now with cannabis, where it was legal, became illegal for reasons that we're going to get into. And now, as you can see in the United States, a lot of states are now pushing for the legalization, and not just medical ways, but in recreational ways as well. So around 1916 to 1931, around 29 states began to outlaw marijuana or weed or cannabis, as we like to call it.
Yeah, and when you say about like what we like to call it, the use of the word marijuana was actually something that was started to try to make it sound like this foreign drug that was scary, because we don't think anything of it to say marijuana. Um, but it was actually a word that was created. That wasn't something that the Mexican people did not call it that. It's basically a bastardization of their words to try to make it sound scary. And to this day, in legislation at the federal level, marijuana is still spelled with an H because white people be just they're just crazy.
So around 1937, the government made it illegal. But the big factor in it is that they did it in an illegal way.
Yeah. So at the federal level, what ended up happening is basically the same thing that happened with prohibition when alcohol was illegal. So what the government said was that you could purchase marijuana if you had this tax stamp to purchase marijuana. However, the only way to get the tax stamp was to already be in possession of the marijuana, which you couldn't do legally because you didn't have the stamp. So you can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And the whole reason that happened was, I believe, I'm forgetting which amendment. I want to say the 10th. There'll be a little pop up right here that'll tell you which actual amendment it is. That says basically the federal government cannot um, overstep and make something illegal or make legislation that impacts the states when the states want something different. And this stamp, tax stamp, is how they circumvented that.
Yeah.
Technically, it wasn't illegal because you could buy the stamp, but you couldn't buy the stamp unless you had the weed, which was illegal to own without the stamp.
I feel like that's a catch
It
22.
absolutely is. And it's the same thing they did with prohibition. And eventually, the Supreme Court went, hey guys, you can't do that because we kind of see what you're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how they effectively made it illegal without, actually ruining the Constitution, which they based it on a economic situation where how they justified it. And if you want to do some digging, which I won't get into, go ahead and see what the repercussions of that decision as far as the tax stamp have had today, because Congress to this day still uses that loophole to impact legislation that otherwise should not be happening. So go ahead and look that up if you'd like to be angry.
Oh, angry you will be.
And I think we need to talk about how they convinced people that marijuana was bad. Because obviously, as Al said, it went from being something used for medicinal purposes, very helpful, could treat a whole host of issues.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's illegal. And how did they do that?
Uh, by doing what they're are best at doing, blaming other people.
Ta-da!
So, obviously they started off with Mexicans because they were the ones that were partaking on it the most, and at least very early on. But later on, they moved into people of color, or more specifically, black people.
And some of the propaganda that came out during this time was wild. I mean, you have posters and PSAs warning that it's going to make you have weird orgies, which sign me up, but and how it's going to cause like your wife to go crazy and somebody will go on a murdering spree, and the propaganda that they put out, it's laughable now. Um and especially when you think about what weed does, you're not going to go and have like a wild orgy and set the house on fire and go murder six people.
I don't think you can.
Like,
In some occasions, when weed doesn't even let you get out of the couch.
yeah. So obviously it was a bunch of a crock of nonsense.
Right.
So I mean, the worst thing you were going to do is like murder a pancake or
But people
something. But
still, to this day, have those kinds of
mhm,
fears because that's how deeply embedded it was in our history. It was like, weed is really, really bad, and it's going to make you do really, really bad
yeah,
things.
and it's not only just the misinformation about the the marijuana itself, but the racism built into it.
I mean,
There was a whole campaign about how it's like this crazy Mexican drug and the Mexicans are evil, you know, dealers of this horrible stuff that's going to ruin your family. There was, if I can try to find it, but there was a whole propaganda thing that if your wife smoked marijuana, it would make her want to go be promiscuous with black men. I mean, I don't think it's the marijuana. It's probably because, you didn't know how to treat your wife like a lady deserves to be treated.
you
But
said the
that's it.
you said the quiet part out
Did I
loud.
say the quiet part out loud? Oh God. Okay. Well, basically the racism. It comes down to the racism.
Yeah. But jumping over into the 1970s, even though most states, if not all states, began to like kind of relaxed the rules on cannabis and going like, okay, this is not as big a deal as people are making it out to be, the federal government actually continued to cling to the false narrative.
Mhm. And that's where that loophole comes in,
Yeah,
because the states were getting frustrated because they didn't necessarily want to prosecute these issues,
right.
but the federal government was like, we still want to make sure everybody suffers. Yeah, and I think we all have heard about the war on drugs, and I think nowadays everybody's starting to realize how that was an abject failure. Um, that just did more harm than good.
Yeah,
We know in the '80s, especially with the Reagans, they went a little wild on the war on drugs, little bit.
they needed something to fight with, right?
Yeah, what a mess. And then there was that little program called D.A.R.E.
Ugh. Man, if there's one thing that I'll never forget about school is the D.A.R.E program.
Well, I don't know about you, but the D.A.R.E. program, it introduced me to drugs that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. And I guess I get their point. They were like, let's get to the kids before the drugs get to the kids or whatever. Um yeah, I don't know if it was just my school district because, I grew up in a, majority, people of color neighborhood, but the DARE program didn't do a very good job at
It's
trying to
it did,
prevent us from using it
it didn't do a good job anywhere. Like
anywhere,
it
even in whites, in like
oh
mostly
no,
white
because
communities.
I gotta be honest, like I'm sitting there and they're talking about like at the time I forget what they call, but MDMA and that stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, if you're out at a party and you take this stuff and this, I'm like, that sounds cool, you
Yeah,
know, and it's been proven. They did studies, and Dare caused more kids to want to try drugs
yeah.
than
They
just
weren't
not talking to them.
they weren't scaring anybody. Like, obviously, I had zero interest in drugs because
Yeah,
I was like, this is a waste of my time. But I'll listen to this just so I could get the participation sticker,
and your
um,
T-shirt.
and my T-shirt, which didn't last me long because it was cheaply made. But that being said, like there were kids that I sat next to that maybe I befriended that all they talked about was like, "Whoa, it makes you see things," and I'm just like,
Yeah,
like
kind of
that
backfired.
wasn't what we were supposed to get out of it. It didn't scare me. It wasn't like, ooh, drugs, bad. Like obviously some, you know,
Oh yeah, I mean it's not to
were
say,
like,
but
hey, that's don't fuck around with that kind of stuff.
and I think what also they talked about in Dare all the time was, oh yeah, people are always offering you drugs, and they're going to be like, hey, you want some drugs? I can honestly say that the number of times I've had strangers offer me free drugs was once, and it was recent.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, in that case, yeah, no. When I grew up, and mind you, obviously, I lived in a bad neighborhood, in some parts of my life. Nobody was just like, "Hey, kids, you want to do drugs?" It was kind of like, yeah, we don't want to get ratted out. Fuck you, kids. Like, you guys are not getting
Yeah,
anything."
it's
But
like they just tried to demonize anybody who used any type of recreational drug,
yeah,
be it weed or anything else.
yeah. If
Um,
anything, I don't think they were willing to share. They
yeah,
were
that's
like,
that's what
"This is
always
hard
got
to
me.
get. You're not getting any."
And people now laugh. They're like, "Where are all those free drugs I was promised?" You know?
Yeah, I was just like, I was waiting for somebody to come, like, while I was walking down the street
Yeah,
as a kid, unsupervised or something, be like, "Hey, kid, do you want to do drugs?" And I'm like, I was like, nobody's offering me drugs,
yeah.
but
I
people
feel
are
like,
offering me alcohol, and
uh,
alcohol tastes gross.
yeah,
But yeah, no, there
but
was nothing. There was nothing ever there.
yeah. And so I told you the story. The only time I've ever been offered free weed by somebody I didn't know, was I was actually at I was at Six Flags during their Halloween event, and you could smell this. You could see it. You could smell it. The whole place smelled like weed. And I was with my mother.
How many people died?
What?
How many people died
Of what?
of that event because it was weed and it's so
Oh
dangerous?
my gosh, all the scary weed. Oh, you know what? There were actually two times, but this time I was with my mother, and
Oh, I thought there were two times that
no,
people
there's
died.
no two times I was offered free weed
Okay.
by strangers. We were walking in, and I was like, it's really rude. All these people bring weed and they're smoking, and nobody offers. Ha ha ha! These two guys turn around with this huge blunt, and they're like, "Hey, we can't finish this. You guys can have it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Thank you. I'm good because I don't know what." you could what that is, but no.
But
But
it
thank
was at a
you.
more recent time.
This
This
was
wasn't like when you
literally
were a
in
kid. This is
October of this past year.
you're a freaking adult.
Yeah,
You make your own decisions
yeah.
at this point. Um,
The second time was I was with my mother again. We were at a concert, Pearl Jam concert, and somebody offered my mother a puff puff pass. My mother declines politely, looks at me, who and she like whatever. And she's like, "What about you?" I'm like, "No, mom, thank you. I do not want this stranger's weed." But
so when I was a kid growing up, obviously, smoking was bad. I understood just smoking like cigarettes was bad enough. Like tobacco, it ruins your lungs, it ruins everything in your body, and then you die. Or you have to wear that thing and
oh, the trach.
yeah, which it's unfortunate. I did see people, we were educated on that, on people who did smoke a lot of cigarettes and ended up like screwing their entire thing, and then you could barely hear the person while they're
I
talking.
had several family members that I lost to
Yeah.
cigarette smoke issues. So
So off the bat, like I grew up with asthma, so it was like, well, I can't smoke anything because I have asthma, so I'm already out of the count. Like they didn't even bother to put that information for kids because I wasn't the only one. There were a lot of kids that were growing up with asthma.
oh,
All they had to say is, "Oh yeah, you want your asthma to get worse?" Because we already experienced what asthma can do at its worst, and all you have to do was tell me, yeah, your asthma's gonna get all fucked up if you smoke. So do that, and then I'd be like, no, I don't want to experience that anymore.
my asthma got worse because my father smoked around me all the time.
Secondhand smoking.
Oh yeah, my lungs. I now have the lung. My lungs are as bad as somebody who's 70 years old and a lifetime smoker because of secondhand smoke.
Yeah,
I never smoked anything.
but funny enough that you said that you were offered twice, and this is more where you're an
I was a
adult.
full adult,
Yeah, you were an
you
adult,
know.
but I had friends who were not people of color, and the stories that I heard from them, they were using weed since they were like
Oh yeah,
early high school, and I was just like,
and
where is all this weed? Like, I don't get it.
that's what's wild to me. When I was in high school, there, people definitely smoked weed.
Right.
I just didn't. I was a choir and newspaper nerd. Like I ran the history club. Like you know, I wasn't the one who was out there smoking weed and being a cool kid.
Yeah.
Um,
We both skipped out on being cool kids.
I mean, that's very cool. I mean, the teachers thought I was cool. It's fine.
That doesn't count. Teachers thought I was cool too.
But the kids that I remember smoking weed were always the white kids. Even like today, when I talk to other adults, other people, they're all white kids, middle class white kids. And I think that, um, again, if we can revisit the racism thing, everybody's always pointing at, oh, the Mexican kids or the black kids. And I'm not saying that those people don't also partake, but I feel like, especially like when we compare notes, it seems like the white kids are the one who are out there doing this stuff, and it's not just weed. Like the number of people who casually talk about how they would just like do cocaine, you know, like what are you doing?
and
You know,
and that's the thing, because growing up as a person of color, I was like, ooh, drugs, ooh, drugs, ooh, don't do it. But all these white kids were like, hey man, we're just gonna go and do this in the basement while our parents are home. And I'm just like, do these people not have consequences? And I slowly found out as I got educated that white people don't have that many
they sure
consequences
don't.
as people of color.
Well, because look at the people who are incarcerated for drug possession or selling drugs or using drugs, um, and a lot of times not even they shouldn't be there because it was either planted or it was a nonsense call or they happened to be around somebody else. Primarily people of color, disproportionately people of color. I mean, you can say that about the entire, jail situation, but
I mean, if
especially
we're
for,
being honest,
yeah, but especially for drug offenses. I mean, you have, everybody laughs like, oh, Snoop Dogg, he's always stoned. Okay, how about literally everybody else? Like, nobody talks about all the white people who are like smoking on stage, but it's always we're focused on Snoop.
yeah, like I love Florence and the Machine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know, but I have a hunch that I'm sure
She's
that
a
she.
magical mystery creature. So
Yes.
it could just be her fairy spirit,
Yeah.
but
Or
it could
shrooms.
also be drugs. And we're not saying this in any kind of derogatory way.
No, absolutely
Um
not.
but it's like we need to, if we're going to like judge one person, then we should judge everybody.
Yeah.
Or alternately, just don't judge anybody.
Yeah, how about that? How about we all get
Because,
along? I know I sound like a hippie, but
well, I mean, smoke some weed. Everybody's friends. Um,
that's literally what it
but
was back in the day.
yeah, and
The
everybody talk.
hippies were all just they were like, we don't. There's why are we gonna worry about these things?
Yeah, I feel like the world would be a better place if everybody was just a little bit high all the time. And like you said, like, oh, well, we're going to judge people for weed, but alcohol's okay. Alcohol, nobody has a problem with. How many people have you heard, let's talk statistically,
Right.
that kill somebody driving a car while high versus a drunk driver? I don't know about you, but I don't know if I could drive a car while high. And I don't mean like focus on the road. I mean like I'd be sleeping on the couch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you never got to your car, and if you did get to your car, you never made it out of your driveway because you'd just be like,
Yeah. And that's not
my car seat's very comfy.
and that's not to say there aren't irresponsible people,
No,
but when
of
you
course.
look at it, the number of issues caused by alcohol, be it drunk driving,
Right.
health problems, social problems, relationship problems, just because of an alcohol dependency versus people who smoke weed. Why is weed the one being demonized?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it comes back to that old propaganda. Like people still joke about reefer madness, which was a ridiculous, ridiculous film made back, during was it in the 30s,
Right. Yeah.
um, when they were making everything illegal. So we're still caught up on that. But you can go to the bar and pound back 6 drinks and black out and punch somebody. That's fine. But God forbid you smoke some weed
Yeah.
or
You could
have
act a
have an
fool.
edible.
Yeah, you can act a fool drinking and yourself to a stupor. But God forbid you're chill and just mind your own business. That's when people get offended.
Yeah. And it's like obviously the United States is coming around.
It is.
What is it? 18 states now?
Right. Yeah. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what states what states are working on those laws, but right now, 18 states, uh, have it where weed is now completely legal, and I mean medical and um, recreational. Now, what do we mean when we say medical and recreational?
Well, if we go all the way back to the 1830s again, it's been known for a very long time that cannabis has lots of medical benefits.
Right.
It can be used for anything, people with seizure disorders or people who have trouble gaining weight or maybe are on chemotherapy and need to have an appetite stimulant. People with anxiety or mental health issues, even PTSD.
Yeah.
It it helps in such a natural way that is not habit forming. That doesn't have all those side effects like a lot of prescription drugs will.
Right.
It's also pain management. I mean, this is something I'm going to be very honest that I'm struggling with right now. I actually, I'm dealing with an injury right now. And when my doctors are talking about medication, they're talking about these medications that have horrible side effects that can be habit forming.
Right.
And I don't want to touch them.
How many commercials have you seen where it's like,
Hmm.
take this medicine, it'll make you better. Here's all side
The
effects.
side effects,
Like
it's
it's
insane. And I sit here going, well, why is it okay to tell me that here, take these medications that are habit forming? They can do all this damage to your body. You could end up with an addiction like we all know about the opiate crisis.
right.
Or you could just go have this cute little gummy that has cannabis in it and your pain you're going to have less pain. It has anti-inflammatory properties and it's not habit forming.
There's a lot of properties of THC, weed, and the chemicals that it contains that help people out in so many ways. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Hmm.
Once the United States gets their, you know, shit together, I'm sure that there's a lot of scientists, a lot of researchers that can go deep into this stuff and see just exactly how well or the potential that these kinds of, drugs, because
They're
in
all
the end,
drugs,
it is
yeah.
a drug.
Yeah.
It's used to help people. Um, it's it's sad that it's laws that are passed by people who don't know what they were talking about to begin with, were making stuff up that were keeping scientists, doctors from being able to advance in the form of the medical community.
And it's not only the laws. We also need to remember how many billions, if not trillions of dollars are tied up in the medication industry.
Right.
You have these big pharmaceutical companies. They don't want something that as, basically cheap and easy as marijuana to be legal, because how are they going to make their big money? If people can go and grow, 4 or 5 plants in their home per person, and, you know, pick a bud and go smoke, and their pain goes away, or their anxiety is better, or they're not having seizures, instead of paying all of this money to them to manufacture these drugs. Drugs, again, could be habit forming, that you have repeat customers. These pharmaceutical companies will fight tooth and nail to keep it illegal, or to cause the consumers to have to buy from either them or other places that can charge hundreds of dollars for something that essentially you can grow for free.
Yeah.
And that's, we always have the recurring theme about the American healthcare system, you know, um, and that's the sad reality. It's almost sometimes doesn't matter, what the scientists say, what the doctors say. It comes down to the money and to the lawmakers who are being paid.
Yeah. That's how the world runs. It's
Yeah.
like we could be in a whole better place, but are we making profit from it? No, then we're not going to push forward. We're not going to evolve. We're not going to become better because there's no gain in it, money wise, anyways, for the rich people.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, there's gain in improving the lives of people and moving forward.
but why would you do that if you could be rich?
Exactly.
And um, as far as the dispensaries, there's been a lot of discussion about who should own these dispensaries. And unfortunately, in a lot of places, instead of allowing the communities who were hardest hit by this failed war on drugs to be able to invest into these businesses and potentially, change a community, change a family's life, whatever it may be, having these dispensaries in the hands of marginalized communities or people of color who were targeted
Right.
unfairly by these drug laws, it's going to white people. And I'm not saying that no white person should ever be allowed to grow or have a dispensary, but it seems grossly unfair that these people, they were basically doing this all along. And now when it's finally legal and they can take, you know, have the opportunity, it's not being given to them.
Yeah.
Or you have people who are incarcerated on these charges, and it's now legal where they live, but they're still in jail for something that these people agree should not have been illegal in the first place.
Yeah.
And we're lucky here in New Jersey that, as at the time of this recording, in the next few days, recreational marijuana will be going up for sale. And we're kind of curious to see who's selling it to us and how much are they going to charge.
The profits that they're going to make is going to be ridiculous. I
Mhm.
mean, even when it was just one state that legalized it, everybody around the United States heard the profit booming just from taxes alone, just from
Mhm.
people are like, we're going to tax you people.
'Cause what
And
is
they
the
made a huge profit in just taxing.
we were recently in Massachusetts and decided we wanted to check out a dispensary because neither of us had been,
Right.
and we just picked one randomly that had good reviews on Google.
It's just like, fuck it, let's do it.
And let me tell you, we walked into this place. It was like a nightclub. Like, it was sparkling clean. They had music playing. Everybody was, having a good time. They handed us an iPad with a menu on it, all the different things. And everybody was so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But what got me, 20% tax on whatever you purchased. 20%.
Yeah.
Not two, not 10. 20%. And
That's,
was that on top of the sales tax?
yeah.
Yeah. 20% on top of the
There's a
sales
lot of tax
tax.
that goes into, you know, being able to purchase weed
Yeah.
nowadays.
And
Like, yeah, it's more, it's spread out more. There's 18 states that you can get it from. And that's just recreationally, by the way, which is like the top level thing that
Mhm.
we're trying to do.
Well, the medical prices are insane as well.
Well, it's when it comes to medicine,
Yeah,
there's
and
no
there's no reason. I mean, there's no actual reason for it.
right.
It comes down to the greed and they charging that because they can.
Yeah. But besides those 18 states that have completely just wiped the state clean and decided, you know what, let's start all over again. There's about 10 states that have decriminalized it and are approved for medical. And besides 4 states, the rest of them have approved it only for medical purposes, and that's it.
Yeah,
But there are still 4 states in the United States that are not sold on this. They refuse to educate themselves. They refuse to use Google. I mean, we use Google like what, 50 times a day nowadays? Like
yeah,
it's not a hidden stuff. It's not like you're getting your information, your facts out of this shady website. It is known
yeah.
knowledge.
This is scientific papers. This is, big organizations. This
Right.
is people who know what they're talking about. But if you were to look up the states where it is still fully illegal or where it's only available for medicinal uses in very specific places or situations, I don't think anybody would be surprised by which states you're illegal or what states it's very limited use.
Yeah.
Because those states tend to love misinformation.
Yeah.
So hopefully they will get with the times.
Hmm.
And even if you have to approach it from but think of the money you could make on taxes. You know,
It's a
it,
it's a fucked up way
it's
of
a messed up way of having to go
yeah.
about it, but the means justify the ends, maybe. You know,
Until a point that they can't do it anymore, and then they'll probably
yeah.
try and make something up for it to be illegal again. Now, here's what gets me is that even before all these rules began to relax for the second time, this isn't a first time issue. This is tried to happen before because it was never a big deal. That was the problem. It was made a big deal out of nothing. And now that people are getting more educated, people are realizing, I was like, wait, so you lied to us? That's pretty much where it went to.
Go figure.
But can you imagine the doctors that were passionate about a job? Not saying that there are doctors that are not. I mean, some people just they they do what they do because they want money, and that's it. It's the harsh, reality that some people live where they just want to be doctors because it makes money, outlive, a good life afterwards. But there are doctors that were very passionate about their jobs, and they knew from what little research they had already done on weed, the things that it can do and the ways that it can help people who were in the brink of saying, "Hey, that's it. I'm losing this battle and I'm going to die." And these men and women, I don't know, would put their entire future, their entire degree, their their everything on the line just to try and help people. For example, I had a friend. Her father had cancer. He, went through chemo, which, if you've ever gone through chemo, I'm sorry, lost his appetite. And appetite stimulants weren't helping. And he needed to eat. It was getting to the point where it was like nothing's working. And the doctor,
And he was doing fine otherwise. He just couldn't. His body was probably shutting down from just
yeah,
not being able to eat at that point.
exactly, because, of the harsh radiation. The doctor who, spoke to the closest family member literally went up to my friend and said, if you want to help your dad, legit serious, go out there and find someone who sells weed. That's the best thing I can tell you right now. Get him weed, get him to smoke it. He'll be hungry in no time. And my friend, who is not like me, is not a person of color, is not my height. She was a petite, you know, woman, was out there like, how do you do this? Like, do I show you the money first or
I mean, if she listened to D.A.R.E, people should just been giving it to her for free,
exactly?
But,
Like she
but
should have
that
been
didn't
able to,
happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
she should have just been able
Just
to step into the streets and have like men going over
like,
her. It's like, hey,
you
hey,
want
do you
some
want
weed?
some? Yeah. No,
You want to buy some drugs?
she actually had to go out there and find these dangerous people who she was like, yeah, me and that guy are friends now. But but she did that just to help her father because his body was shutting down and
And did it work?
he wasn't recovering. It worked, don't get me wrong. He got an appetite back and he was eating. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that it's going to solve the problem. And he ended up passing away from it. But at least he wasn't miserable doing so. Can you
Yeah.
imagine just I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have gone through days where there's like I don't
If
have the energy.
if I, God forbid, I'm ever in that situation, if I have to choose dealing with that stone cold sober
Yeah.
or dealing with it high, guess which one I'm gonna pick. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like most people would and if you wouldn't, are you okay?
But the thing that we're trying to get to is this thing isn't bad. It's known throughout history outside of the United States and European countries. I had friends that left the United States to European countries where people over there
Oh,
had
like
half the mind.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam had half the mind, and we were like, yeah, we have a cafe over there, and people were like, okay, coffee, and they sell weed, right? And you walked in there, and it was just a plume of just smoke of people just smoking weed. Amsterdam was fine. You didn't hear, oh, the murder rate is up in Amsterdam because of weed.
Yeah,
No,
that's
the murder rate was up in the United States
yeah,
because of
we
guns.
USA.
Yeah.
Uh, go team. But I mean, if I had to choose between hanging out like at a bar with like really drunk people, especially like drunk Americans,
Yeah.
or hanging out in a cafe where everybody is high and chill and they're making me like a vanilla latte, I think I'm choosing the cafe
Yeah.
because everybody just chill out, there for the vibes. You don't have to
Until
worry about a bar
until
brawl.
the person brings out the tray of brownies
And there's a
and
fight.
just leaves it there, just there in the middle of everything. Now, that's another misconception. That was like, oh yeah, if you smoke weed or ingest weed in any way, you'll just instantly be hungry for brownies.
That never happened to me. Like I've never been hungry
It's
afterwards.
it's an appetite stimulant, so it's not necessarily brownies. Is if you have a fucking tray of brownies, you're going to destroy it. Now, you can have a tray of fruit. That tray of fruit will be gone by the time you're like,
Anything, it's
yeah,
gone.
anything like saltine crackers, that nasty ass dry crackers that like have a sprinkle of salt in them,
I
gone.
Yeah. Well, what we joke about in my experience, and I'm going to be honest, like I didn't partake in this, hand to God until very recently. Because I just wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't know how I'd react. I didn't know anything really about
Right.
it. And there was nobody in my circle at the time who who did smoke weed or who used cannabis products. Um, so I kind of wanted to be like, I want to be in a safe place among friends. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm fighting an injury. I have some health issues, regularly in pain, and we often joke that um, I am very high functioning when I partake, and it's basically because the little THC molecules are going in, and they're like, "Bitch, you live like this," and they're so focused on like fixing all the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
There's none left over to actually get me high.
Yeah.
So, and it is great because I don't hurt, like I feel good, and there's none of those, like I'm not out of my mind. I don't need to go eat all the brownies.
No.
I'm just feeling nice. Like,
And I'm
oh,
sure that hungover the next day was awful.
what hangover?
Exactly.
I walked right into that one. But but yeah, it was and I remember when I was up in Massachusetts and I tried my first little edible candy. They come in all sorts of little flavors. They have like Sour Patch watermelon. It's great. But I tried one and everybody's looking at me like, did it kick in? Did it kick in? And I'm just sitting there, I'm talking to my friends, and I didn't realize it had kicked in until it started to wear off because I hadn't been hurting. And then I was like, oh, my back hurts again. I was like, oh, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
you know?
And I think it's because you were in pain so long that you didn't realize when you were suddenly not in
Yeah.
pain. You were like, oh, I'm just fine. I'm just chill. And you're like, that means that it's working. And you're like, I don't know. But then once that reality came back to hit you,
And then you're like, oh,
you were like, oh, how am I hurt? Oh, and then everything just clicks,
yeah.
you know?
And conversation we actually just had a few minutes before we started recording this. Um, as far as any study shows, as far as anybody's experience shows, THC, cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, not habit forming.
No.
And then I was saying to Al that I understand that it's not habit forming, but picture now, you're in pain every day for years and you're just miserable. And then you try marijuana and
It works for you.
it works.
Yeah.
For the first time in years, it's not necessarily that you're in no pain, but you feel so much better.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I'm like, I can understand that's not habit forming, but I can also understand wanting to always feel that way,
Right.
to feel that you're not in pain. And in that sense, I can see it becoming a habit,
Right.
which is why I'm very careful. I won't,
But I
and
mean that can go again, and I think that's more of a mental state, not the
oh,
actual
absolutely.
thing that's doing it,
Absolutely.
but the mental state of, well, this makes me happy, and I am always sad, and I don't always want to be sad, so I'm gonna try and be happy as many times as I
Exactly.
can. It can go with food. It can go with a
Mm,
lot of things that you shouldn't overdo it in. Like everything is always better in
moderation.
moderation.
Yeah.
Everything. When it comes to whatever you do, moderation. She's not going to listen to me when it comes to riding um, roller coasters. But,
I've
I
gotten so
abandoned
much
that.
better.
Have you?
I I actually have because of that chronic pain thing.
Oh, okay.
They start to hurt after a while now, so
Right.
I had to scale back,
Yeah.
but you know,
So luckily, she's saved herself from, you know, and rides roller coaster moderately. But that being said,
I
yeah,
always
no.
feel like you're judging me for that.
Am I? No.
I mean, I'm not that into roller coasters, she says as her roller coaster station sign is hanging over her head. Stop
It
looking
ain't
at me
it
like
ain't over
that.
my head, just saying. But yeah, what we basically want you to get out of this podcast, besides, hopefully you had a good laugh, um, is that do your research. It's nowadays it's not that hard for you to know, hey, is this for me? It might not be for you, and that's completely fine. But just know that just because it's not for you doesn't mean that other people can't enjoy it. And if there are people who have abused it in the past, because everybody goes a little crazy with something sooner or later, it doesn't mean that you should shut down everybody from enjoying something that is harmless
But could also be very beneficial to them.
and can be very beneficial to them, you know? I remember going into the dispensaries, and I mean, every dispensary is different. There's no two alike. Just like you go to a liquor store and it's like, hey, this is my city's,
Yeah.
my little town's
Yeah.
liquor
The
store. It's
corner
right here.
store,
Right. And then you go to like a liquor store. Like, I mean, there's barrels of cheese and wines and
all sorts of
all
things.
sorts of things. Dispensaries can also be just like that, where you go into dispensary and you're flipping through a pamphlet going, for someone who doesn't know, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get weed, and you're like, you thought you're gonna get
Yeah.
weed. Why don't you start flipping through this, and you're just like,
And it's amazing
mm,
how knowledgeable and passionate the people at these facilities are.
yeah,
My One of my very close friends, mother's boyfriend, whatever that makes him, he works at a dispensary, a medical dispensary, but he is so knowledgeable. And these people, him and these other people, you can say, "Hey, I want to relax and laugh and just have vibes and eat
yeah.
cake." And they can pinpoint what strain, what variety, and what type of product you would need.
There's
It's
there's
fascinating. Like,
so many strains.
yeah,
It's not just black and white.
yeah,
It's
and the people who are opposed to the legalization, it's like I guess they picture like these like seedy, like kind of backdoor kind of
right.
deals. These places are immaculate. It's like walking into a pharmacy.
Yeah,
Um, And
Except it's not boring.
yeah, it's way more fun, way more fun. And I feel like even if you maybe don't want to partake, go check one out.
Yeah.
Just kind of see, because I think
You
a
don't
lot
have
of
to
people will be
purchase anything.
surprised. Yeah,
Just go in there, like window shop. As long as you're over 21, because you're not getting through those doors.
yeah,
The security and
it's
dispensaries are
extremely
just like
serious.
you're either 21 or turn back around. Like I think there was an officer in one that was just like standing in front and be
I
like,
think
"Yeah,
he
you
was like
you pass."
just a security guy,
Oh,
but
okay,
like they basically have a bouncer, and it's just because they take it very seriously. It took a long time, to get back to where this is even possible to have it legal.
right,
So nobody wants to mess it up,
yeah,
and I think that's where we want to keep it.
yeah. Compared to what, 5, 6, 7 years ago,
Hmm.
where it was like, "Oh, you got weed from somebody. You don't know what it's gonna do."
Hmm.
But that's the thing now. Doctors can tell you.
Yeah,
And say you're like, oh, but Danielle, we don't really have mental problems or we don't aren't really in pain. I was like, well, good for you,
must be
first of all.
nice. Must be
Must be
nice.
nice.
What's it like to be one of God's chosen ones? Like,
But say you want to get into the mood.
and
They have
yeah,
shit for that. They literally do.
and there's nothing wrong with like, hey, I just want to try it out because it sounds fun. That's okay, you know. And
That's
they have people who can tell you exactly what to do.
Yep. And
And
they'll tell you exactly how it's going to work out. And any questions
they
like,
even
oh, how
had
long is it going to take
drinks.
me? Boom, done.
They had drinks. They had like, if you're a White Claw kind of person,
They did.
they had except but instead of alcohol, it had THC in it. And I was like, all right, I'll bite, and it was
Yeah.
delicious. Like,
Yeah. And they were like, well, smoking is still bad for you. You have options. You don't have to smoke it. If you feel like
you can,
smoking is bad for people like
yeah,
asthmatics, you like chocolate, don't you?
yeah. You got to watch out with the edibles, though.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. It's a slippery slope. But again, the information's out there. The research was done for you. If you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. But if you're curious about it, there are people that will help you every step of the way. Before you get to the store, when you're at the store or dispensary, and information for afterwards.
Mhm.
There are people who are like, "Oh my god, I did this, freak out," and people will just be like, "Just chill, just chill." Literally, you're not just chill, and later on, you're gonna be like, "Wow, I was freaking out for no reason."
Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah,
that sounds a little judgmental, but
but yeah, no, definitely
yeah,
Google.
just do your research. The information's out there, and if you like science, you can read it from doctors and scientists. If you
Yeah,
just like plants, read from the botanists who worked on these strains.
yeah.
It's fascinating,
I
and to
can't wait
see.
to where all this goes.
Yeah, it's
Because,
it's
like I
it's
said, they're
fascinating.
they're just they're just going into here and going like, what can we do with this? I can't wait until doctors go, hey, we found out we could do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all here for it, because I mean, for me personally, I don't want to take your habit forming meds. I don't like the side effects. I don't like anything about them.
Nope.
But if you give me like a yummy yummy gumdrop and say, "Hey, here you go, take one every other day." All right, I can do this.
It's like you're only gonna take one gummy bear, and you'll be fine for the rest of the
Yeah.
day.
I think what I need to do is like get a bag of gummy bears.
Yeah, don't do that.
Well, no, have the infused gummy bear, but then have like regular gummy bears on standby, because I like gummy bears. So
You
I
can't just have
I can't
select.
just have a gummy bear, so I need to have like the non-infused variety
Yeah.
ready to go. So
Again, education's very important. Educate yourself before you decide. I'm just gonna shove 5 of these gummy bears.
yeah,
What's
don't
the
do that.
worst that's
Do
gonna
not do
happen?
that.
Besides, you're going like this for like 5 hours, and they're like,
Unless
"Hey,
you
are
have a
they
very
alive?"
comfy
And I was just
couch.
like, "Yeah, they're breathing."
And that's not to scare you off. We're
No.
just telling, in moderation, take the advice of the professionals. Do your research. Be with friends. If you don't have friends, we'll take your free drugs that we've been waiting for since D.A.R.E. So you just let us know.
Yeah, right. Damn,
I'm
never once
so,
got offered free
it's a little
drugs,
it's a
man.
little annoying there, because I thought they'd be much more prevalent.
Yeah, no,
But don't be scared of weed. It's
right.
gonna be okay. I mean, my mother is she's very open to this. Al, I don't know.
I have no idea. I'm gonna find out.
Uh, we love you. Don't be mad at him. So
I'll make you flan.
he'll make you dinner and take you somewhere nice.
Yeah, right.
So
But yeah, No, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you got something out of it.
Even if just enough information, or if we screwed up a fact, that it'll help you to go do some research and maybe
Yeah,
reconsider,
yeah, yeah.
or learn something new.
But that's it for today. Enjoy 420. You know, light
Yeah.
it up, eat a gummy, pass out on the couch.
Yeah. So we have some stuff we've got to go do real quick. So
Yeah, yeah. We have to run errands
yeah,
and
errands.
edit stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely we have to go we're gonna go do that.
Yeah.
So
All right. Bye.
bye.